Welcome to the Metal Queens podcast. I'm Steve Richards, another episode, and on this episode of the MQP, because this is the show where we celebrate the fierce and fearless women who are shaping the world of heavy music. Today I'm joined by a front woman who has been taking the rock and metal world by storm with a voice that's both haunting and powerful, a cinematic sense of artistry, a debut album that came out last October, Are You in a Cult? She and her band have carved out a dark, electrifying corner of modern rock, from festival stages like Download and Aftershock to having their music featured in TV shows, video games, and even the WWE. Dead Posey is a band you can't ignore, and please welcome for the very first time here on the Metal Queens podcast, Danyell from Dead Posey. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's great to have you here. As we are recording this, they are on the verge of a UK tour to wrap up this year. They'll be heading out shortly. You know, Dead Posey, Danielle, has such a unique and cinematic sound. Can you take us back to the very beginning? What vision did you and Tony have when you first started the band?
So when Dead Posey first started almost a decade ago, which is absolutely insane
Hmm.
to me, it feels like yesterday that it started. I had another band before this. Tony was in another band before Dead Posey. And I've always loved the dark side of life and just the thought of we're all going to die one day, so live your life to the fullest, and finding the beauty in the darkness as much as the light. So Dead Posey really came from that ethos, I would say. And it also came from a nursery rhyme, the ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies.
Hmm.
Um, it was really interesting when I was looking deeper into that with the Black Plague and stuff, where they like had posies in their pockets. And so everybody knows the word dead, and posy we came up with because of the ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. So that's how the name came about, was from that. And I just wanted to lean in more into the dark side a little bit more. And our first our first EP had a little bit more of that like kind of bluesy, kind of swampy thing a little bit to it. And then as things have progressed, we got more into that harder, even more dark. I've always loved, like Typo Negative, and Manson, and Depeche Mode, Nine Inch Nails. So we just wanted to dive a little deeper into that vein as time has gone on. So I don't know if I answered your question per se. So if I didn't, you can steer me in that direction. But that's kind of a little bit of a backstory into where Dead Posey started and how it's evolved so far.
Yeah, you mentioned some of your influences there. I want to stay on that for a moment here. Other influences you've mentioned in the past, Garbage, Nine Inch Nails, David Lynch, and even Salvador Dali, too. How did those musical and artistic inspirations show up in your songwriting and imagery, too?
So like someone like David Lynch,
Mm.
rest in peace, he just has had such a unique vision with his films and how he directed, and it film and television and music always have gone hand in hand since silent films weren't a thing anymore. And Salvador Dali, just his abstract art has always been interesting to me. Just I love minds that just think abstractly and not perfectly in a box. I've been a child of coloring outside the lines since I can remember, and I feel like people like David Lynch and Salvador Dali definitely draw outside the lines. And then, like Nine Inch Nails, they weren't just another band just playing the instruments, which is amazing. They added some of the electronic side into it, and I just feel that there shouldn't be any rules. And I feel those are the ones that always intrigue me because they always are coloring outside the box. Manson, with just his imagery and how he went about his songwriting and how his imagery with those 90s videos were just so iconic. And I just love how you can bring your music to life with visuals. So that's why we've said Salvador Dali and David Lynch are also inspirations because visually they very much so are. And then musically, I love other bands that bring some of that visual into their music as well. So it's big inspirations for Dead Posey as we've evolved over time.
Was art and music big in your house growing up, or were you the rebel?
Twofold. Music was always big in the house. My dad always played guitar, but never for a living. And so he was always blasting some kind of rock and roll in the house. Same with my mom. And we had a piano. I did do piano lessons. So yeah, there was some music in the house in that regard, but not in the sense that I'm not a prodigy that's been playing one instrument since I was 5, which would have been amazing, but I did do piano lessons for a while. The house was full of music just because we are music lovers. Um, we're always watching different movies and all that fun stuff. My papa, he's a homicide detective, but a writer as well. So there's definitely that artistic spirit, I would say, that's always been around that mentality. You can do anything you want. You don't have to just, go be a doctor, even though we need those.
Hmm.
Um, but it was definitely more on the art, do whatever you want type of thing growing up.
In 2018, you signed to Sumerian Records. Was there a moment when you felt, okay, Dead Posey is really starting to break through now?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I feel any band when they're first starting out, it's kind of a feather in the cap. You're like, oh, I'm being recognized, I'm being seen by the industry. Maybe this is it, and for a very, very short time, it was helpful when Dead Posey was just starting out to have that ecosystem for, you know, to be honest, maybe propped up for maybe 6 months to a year. It was helpful in the sense that they could make a few phone calls. We were able to get on a tour, some festivals, got Dead Posey out of being a local band into now we're a touring band. So in that regard, it was a good big step for Dead Posey into the next phase that we needed to click into. Um, where we're at now, it makes sense that that time ended because where we are now is in a different place where we really want to build our own worlds and, you know, really just have all control of what we're doing and not rely on the music industry, the business side
Mm,
as much, because I feel like it could be such a crutch to artists if you're just waiting for them to call your phone to get you on this tour or get you on that festival and not be proactive doing your own thing. So I feel like it was a blessing in disguise to be dropped by them a few years ago because it really made us extra gritty and take the bull by the horns and just really grow our thing into what we're doing. Hence why we started doing our own headlining tours now. Even if 50 people show up a night, to us, that's a success because that can grow into something. Where what I'm seeing a lot of bands that are signed right now, they're just waiting around for their label to hopefully or their agent to hopefully get them on a bigger tour. And then if they're not getting on those, they're not playing or anything at all. And I feel like that could be such a disservice. But I understand why they're doing it because the industry right now is set up where if a band does go play and they don't bring 100 plus people a night, the industry frowns upon that and they don't want to touch you.
yeah.
And we're happy that we're not part of that ecosystem anymore and that we are building our own thing and not just sitting around waiting for a win here and there. So to answer your question, it was great at the time in 2018 when we did sign because it really did switch us into that Knicks thing. And lit a fire under our ass. And we went down the path of just trying to write more and get more songs. When you go on a tour and you only have so many songs, then you can't play that many songs live. I think when we were signed, we only had, I think, 6 songs that we could even play. And then we
Mm.
had like a few rough songs that we had to throw into the set because we didn't have enough music to even go play our own show in longer than like 30 minutes. So it really helped us get into that next phase of where we are now. But I don't feel they were right for us after a certain amount of time because they weren't in the business, and I don't feel like the industry even is in general anymore, really trying to build a band or artist's career. They're looking for the ones that are already doing it themselves and then picking those up. They're not there to build with you anymore. And we didn't even have an A&R person backing us there, which is so imperative to have. So it was good that we parted ways as far as that went. And I think that's why we are where we are right now. But I'll always be grateful for the time that we did have because I do feel that it took us out of the local band thing into the touring band, which is important.
Yeah, we have and feature so many DIY bands here from around the world on the Metal Queens podcast. So, your debut full-length album dropped last October. And by the way, now they do have a full set. I just saw them recently near me here in South Carolina, and it is a great show. So go out and see them too. And we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up here. So, Are You in a Cult? What was the journey like creating that compared to your earlier EPs? Obviously, it was a full length.
Yeah, Arena Cult started about, gosh, in 2020 is when we were starting to write for that. And obviously, it was a crazy time for everybody in the world. And it was just, it was a very cathartic time to just get all your feels out during that time because we've never lived in a time like that. So it was a crazy time to write that album, and that the Are You in a Cult uh title just kind of came naturally just because what we were seeing. It I said it one day and Tony's like, yeah, that's that. And it rolled off the tongue. We were watching a lot of cult documentaries like Nexium. Have you seen that one? The
No.
Nexium. That one's pretty wild. It was like started out with this guy like kind of being like a pyramid scheme type situation, but then it turned into like a little bit of a sex cult thing if you're really in it. It was weird. But we were watching those kind of documentaries, obviously with like the Charles Manson docs, among others, and plus seeing how the world was feeling, how American politics was feeling. And so that name just came pretty easily for us. And just writing that album, there was such a difference compared to our first EP, because our first EP, it was before Dead Posey as a band ever played live. So this album, because of COVID happening. And then we actually did start playing again in like 2021, 2022. We actually got to test some of these songs live before we finished the final recordings. So there's something special with that. And it really, I feel, made the band evolve a little bit more because we were able to kind of road test these songs, whereas we weren't doing that with our prior work. And two, because of touring, our sound has evolved over time. We've influenced or injected some more of our influences. So this one just felt special, and it felt Like it was the next evolution of Dead Posey, and now it's crazy because it's already been a year, and
Yeah.
I already have a whole bunch more stuff I started to write for Tony and I to start messing around with stuff at the end of this year. That now I'm already on to like, oh, there's just so much. We just have so much to say, and so we're excited even about the Nick's new stuff as one is. But yeah, the difference I'd say with the two would be the first EP. It was before we really ever played live as a band. Whereas this album, you could hear the difference because there's just a little more depth going in and more of our influences. So it was a fun one to do, and we're very proud of it, and still can't believe it's almost been a year since
Yeah.
it's been released.
Danielle just
And
teased at some new music they're working on, so hopefully more coming next year. I wanted to ask you about the track Dark Side. You just re-released it. It's not a remix, but it's with Dead on a
yeah,
Sunday. What was the decision to work with Dead on a Sunday and re-release this? What was the strategy
we
behind that?
always like we always liked the idea of doing a potential feature on one of our songs, and we really liked what he's doing, and we just thought his voice would make a lot of sense, uh, to add to the song. And so, it's one of the fans' favorites, the original Dark Side song, so we thought it would be fun to do one with a feature. So it wasn't too much thought beyond that. We thought he would be a good fit to join us for that one. And we think it turned out cool, and, fans liked it, and he had a great voice for it. And I think he's touring too. I don't know if he's touring or just toured, but if anybody doesn't know of him, go check him out. He's pretty cool. He's even more leaned into the dark wave goth, where we have a little bit of both going on. So it was fun to bring him on in.
All right, let's talk touring. We mentioned earlier they're hitting the road this fall, the UK, Europe, for the rest of the fall, starting in October. You've hit some huge stages: Download, Aftershock,
Mhm.
Shiprocked. Which festival, if any, moment stands out as unforgettable for you? Was there one or two that you can remember?
Yeah, so Download was amazing.
Mm.
We were on the Kerrang stage that day, and we had no idea who was going to show up to the tent to see the set. And so when I initially came walking out on stage, it was completely full, and I was kind of blown away. I didn't realize how much Download actually goes off. So that was a great time. And then the most memorable so far as shows or festivals go, was last year in Spain when we played Rockland. We played after Scorpions, so
Mm.
they opened for us. We were the cleanup crew, and we played at 1:30 a.m., which was the latest we had ever played. And we had no expectations, really. We were just like, who knows? Maybe we're playing to some people as they buy some merch, at the way out of the festival. And so we had really we didn't know what to think. So when I came out on stage and everyone was staying, the entire crowd was staying. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, there's no way that these people are staying this late to see a band they've never heard of before. And they were so interactive and full of energy, and they stayed with us the whole time until like 2:30 in the morning. And it was just such a magical time. It was the biggest stage we'd ever played. There was a catwalk to walk up and down, so I was having fun with that. And it was so far a highlight. And then one other one, even though it wasn't this huge festival show with huge crowd, our show in London last year was our first headlining show, and we played at the Black Heart, and that room was full and just excited, and it was all of our fans, and it was just so rewarding to see that we brought our fans to a show in another country and it was the beginning of why we started doing our headlining tours this year was because of that show. And then we also played Manchester there as well, our own show. And so those ones are special to us, um, definitely. So,
Yeah, it's interesting, and it always fascinates me. Festival performances, and I was just at Louder Than Life, which you've played that one before, and Incarceration earlier this summer. And I always like to watch the early bands, the new and up and coming bands. And it's got to be a weird feeling because you got what, 25, 30 minutes, maybe 40 to
mhm.
make an impression. You don't know, like to your point earlier, you don't know what to expect. Like when you were in Spain, they stayed late. So it's got to be, and again, it's a quick hit.
Oh, it's you have to have a set that just like the punch.
Badass. Yeah.
By the time you get off, you're like, holy shit, there is no room to breathe during those kinds of sets. And you have to win over crowds that don't know who the fuck you are.
Right.
So even when you support bands on bigger tours, it's the set's different than when you're a headliner because on our headlining show we can breathe a little bit. On when you're opening or you're at a festival and you're one of the earlier slots, it's just really just it's go time and you got to win them over in 20 to 30 minutes and it's a workout. It's a definite workout and it's fun. And it's just a different beast than when you're doing your own shows. So it's a good time though.
And speaking of shows, because we like segues here, being a radio guy,
Mhm.
um, can we expect to see you on a U.S. tour next year, perhaps?
As far as our tours, are you talking other
Your tour,
tours?
a
Yeah,
headlining tour.
we definitely are going to start sniffing around to see if there's anything for next spring, summer. Most definitely.
All
So
right.
hopefully by that time there's a few new songs that we can start road testing on that tour as well. That's the goals right now. So it's very, very possible that that will be happening.
And also possible for more new music next year, too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. So
So
a lot to come in 2026 for Dead Posey. All right, we're going to wrap up here, Danielle. This is the lightning round. Some fun questions for you to get to know you a little better. The,
beautiful.
the first album you ever bought, what was it?
The first album I ever bought would have been oh God. AFI actually.
Good
It
one.
oh God. Something sorrow. Sing the sorrow. Yeah, sing
Sing the
the song.
Sorrow.
Yes. And I,
Guilt.
I remember vividly blasting that in my shitty little car and that held a toothpick had to hold up the CD player because it was broken and didn't snap back on. And I definitely remember blasting that album over and over and over again. So yeah, that was my first one.
Guilty pleasure, artist or song?
Guilty pleasure artist or song.
Who would it
Guilty.
be? Or what song?
I guess I'll go with Pink Pony Club Chaperone.
Chaperone, yes. Usually I get
Yeah,
Britney Spears here or Chaperone or
yeah.
Sabrina Carpenter.
That
Yeah.
was that was a vibe last year, so I'll go with her. Because it's not
Favorite
really the norm that I listen to at all. So I'll go with that.
favorite horror movie of all time?
Mm, I guess you can consider that. I like Silence of the Lambs. Would you consider that horror?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay, because that I watched a million times is probably a little too young, but I did, and it definitely stuck with me. And I never trusted anybody after seeing that. So,
No, I remember watching that for the first time and with friends. We went to see it in the theater and
mhm.
we talked about it for about 3 hours after, dissecting the whole movie, every scene almost.
The-
Yes.
mhm.
Oh yeah.
Or what's his space dancing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, those two things. Whew.
It puts the lotion in the basket.
Oh God, I feel like I was like no more than because what year did that come out?
Oh, oh, geez. 90s. What year?
90.
One maybe? Maybe right
Oh yeah,
around there, I think. Yes.
my parents, they always had all the different movies, and I definitely remember as a probably like maybe at 10 or 11, I was going through their film collection, and I remember popping that one on one day. People do this. Yeah. But again, my grandfather was a homicide detective too in Los Angeles, so I definitely have heard some horror stories over
Yeah,
the
I'm
real life
sure.
stories.
All right, and the last one, dream collaboration, living or dead. Who would it be with?
It now that he's passed, I would say David Lynch because I honestly wanted him to film a Dead Posey music video one day. It actually was a dream of mine to happen, and now sadly it can't happen. And that would be the dream collaboration.
All right, Danyell from Dead Posey. Thanks for joining me here on the Metal Queens podcast. Their
Thank
debut
you.
album came out last October. They have new music coming next year, touring coming next year as well. Follow them on socials. Check out their music on all streaming platforms. Stream it, buy it, turn it up loud, and check them out live too. They are awesome and put on an awesome live show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, darling.
And thanks for watching the Metal Queens podcast. I'm Steve Richards. Like it, share it, subscribe to it, write a review. Talk to you next time.